All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting stream of Lunch with Eclipse. I'm enjoying some popcorn, which I just made. And today, we'll do something a little bit different. I'm playing a fighting game, which is not something we typically would play, but I'm a big fighting game fan. And especially in my college years, played a lot of the early days of Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and a myriad of different fighting games that came through the University of Oregon. We had a little rec center that had an arcade in it, and for some reason, we would get a lot of the early versions of games. It would be one of the first places in the United States to get stuff, and I'm not sure why that was, but it just was. So we got a lot whenever there was a Street Fighter update, like Champion Edition or Hyper Fighting. We'd be one of the first places to get it. We got all of the sort of random Chinese hacks of Street Fighter, like Rainbow Edition or Accelerator Edition and things like that. And that was awesome. The bad aspect is that it always encouraged me to kind of leave my college classes and go to the EMU, as we called it, to play fighting games, because there was always a bunch of people there. And one of the games that came in during that early Street Fighter days, when we were sort of looking for something different, was this game, Fighter's History. And for those who don't know, Fighter's History is released by Data East, and it is very much a Street Fighter clone in many ways. In fact, they got sued by Capcom because it was so close. However, it didn't seem like they won, because the game ended up producing two more sequels. One was Karnov's Revenge or Fighter's History Dynamite for the Neo Geo CD, and then another one was a Super Nintendo sequel that was predominantly based off of Mizuguchi, who is one of the main characters in this game. And the aspect of the game that is interesting is that all fighters in this game have sort of a weak point, and if you hit the weak point, then you will dizzy them. And let me adjust my controls. Oh yeah, these are already adjusted, so that's fine. And so for different characters, it will be different locations that you'll have to discover as you hit them. They'll start to like glow, or flash. And then once you hit that a few times, they will dizzy. And so that's very kind of innovative from a fighting game perspective, for sure, especially comparatively to like a Street Fighter, which is dizzied based off of hit/damage kind of situation. And the other kind of interesting thing about this game is that it's a very cheap game. Like, all of the characters are quite cheap as far as being able to suck you into moves, sort of like the ability to hit an attack, like kind of go through an opponent's attack and hit them with their own attack, and things like that. But every character is cheap, and it kind of made the game fun. Whereas a lot of fighting games attempt to try to balance the characters and try to make it fair and reduce situations where you're trapped. This game sort of, maybe not willingly, but just ended up embracing that stuff and allowed you to just basically take the hit throws, do sort of spinning pile driver equivalent moves from a far distance and things like that. And I think that's what made it fun, is because everyone just had a fun time playing this game, never treating it too seriously, but it was a nice break from Street Fighter. So let's jump in. I can actually play all of these characters as far as knowing their moves and their weaknesses and stuff like that. But I will start with Matlock, who's kind of like this London sort of punk guy. And he's probably the closest that this game has to Guile. He has sort of a spinning sort of sonic boom move that looks like that. He doesn't have the flash kick, but he does have that, which is kind of like a breakdance move, and he also has this sort of flash kick. So he's obviously the inspiration from Guile. And just like Street Fighter, you kind of travel around the world. This is London. And it has the standard like 6-button. Hey Pat. Feel free to come in. I'm just kind of explaining what this game is. Feel free to sit down.
Sure. Excuse me, everybody.
That one is not connected right now since I was kind of playing through the story.
Okay.
But, so as you can see now, my my sort of glasses are glowing or flashing, and that means that he's hit me a few times, and if he hits me one more time, I'll dizzy. And that's sort of like one of the interesting aspects of this game. And Pat distracted me, so now I'm I got beat. But
It's my fault, guys. My bad. Oh wow, look at this dude.
what's that?
No, I'm just admiring these colorful characters.
Oh yeah. So this is. Do you know this this fighting game series?
Fighter's History. No, I'm not familiar with it.
So it was, and I'm reiterating a little bit, but it came out around the same time as Street Fighter, right? Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition hyper fighting sort of scenario, and it is so close as far as ripping off Street Fighter, especially the time that it got sued by Capcom.
Really?
Yeah. And they didn't really win, or if they did, it was very marginal because this game went on to create 2 more sequels. And it originally was in the arcade, and eventually got versioned. Obviously, this one got ported to the Neo Geo. Sorry, Super Nintendo. And then the next game, which is Fighter's History Dynamite or Fighter's History Karnov's Revenge outside of Japan, it ended up on the Neo Geo arcade and Neo Geo CD. So it kind of like went to a even harder audience. And then the second game, or the third game, I mean, if you want to call it whatever, but the third game in the series is focused on one of the characters, Mizuguchi, and that was brought to the Super Nintendo. And what's great about this game is that all the characters are extremely cheap. As in, yeah, cheap. So like the feel with the Street Fighter and a lot of fighting games is there's this kind of journey by the developers to try to make things fair.
Okay.
But this game, each character is very cheap.
Each character is broken in their own special way.
Yeah, and that's what kind of makes it fun. So like expectations of things like which you'd have in a fighting game is like take the hit throw, which is a classic Street Fighter thing where someone comes in and they hit you, and then you are able to have the priority and theoretically throw them afterwards, right?
Right.
But in this game, if you take the hit by someone, they can come in and still throw you.
Okay.
They can suck you in from very far. Like he could suck me in right there. So even if you're not, whatever you're doing, no matter what, he could suck you in. And it made it fun because, especially during the time, right, we were playing Street Fighter, we were playing Mortal Kombat, more serious competition. This was a kind of a nice arcade game to show up and you just have fun. It's kind of more relaxed.
Yeah, I gotta say this is much more appealing. I mean, to me, I have lots of friends who are very much into fighting games. I have a real hard time grasping the meta of games, mainly because
yeah,
I'm kind of a dingus like that. But this seems like a game I would love to show one of my fighting game friends.
Yeah,
just to mess with them. By the way, I'm also loving the aesthetics of this game. It's very nice to look at.
Yeah, it is. It's the same thing as Street Fighter. It travels around the world.
This is very similar to Street Fighter, I gotta say.
This is their Sagat, right?
Yeah.
Character, right? Samche, who's a Thai kickboxer. And it's one of those things too where like you could do a special move and hit someone and they could still, normally in a lot of fighting games, if you do a special move and you hit someone, they can't do anything. They're being hit by the special move. But actually in this game, even if you hit them with a special move, they can recover and punish you. So it is very much a...
you can man,
yeah.
So someone gets that special move going and they think they have you, and then you can just
yeah, you can actually,
ruin all their
depending,
fun.
you could actually just get through it, like take the hit and then recover from it.
Oh my god, that's awesome. So you were also mentioning that if some part of your character starts flashing and then you get hit again, you get dizzy.
It's a couple times. It's about 3 times. But yeah, so for me, it is the my glasses. I think for him, see, oh, there you go. There's his example right there.
Oh yeah, right there.
Yeah. So now that's basically the way that their dizzy system works.
Is that common in fighting games? Because I from what I know, most fighting games, if you take a lot of damage, then you will be it will give you it starts giving you more of an edge.
Most fighting games, yes, are like if you hit a player within a certain number of times or amount of damage within a certain amount of time, they get dizzy, right? That's the normal common thing. So you have momentum, you cause them to be dizzy. Whereas this is specifically if you can position your attacks, right?
Is this Vega?
He is, I guess, the equivalent. He doesn't have claws. He throws his roses and stuff, but he has that sort of flamboyant.
Oh my god, this is awesome.
Kind of character, right? And he sort of has the, Vega has that slide. He has an air throw like Vega, right? So, or Balrog, depending on which country you're talking about.
By the way, is a B for Mead's reenactment of the French Revolution right here.
Yes. Say he throws roses, charged roses. And it also follows the 6-button Street Fighter configuration. Exactly. So
yeah, I gotta say, you are just demolishing your way through this game.
I played a fair bit, and actually I can play all of the characters. And Matlock, I think, is one of the fairer characters as far as not being cheap, even though he is still cheap.
And I heard when I was walking in that Matlock is somewhat like the Guile character.
Yeah, he's like a British Guile.
Gotcha. When did this come out, by the way? Late 80s?
So the arcade one, I think, came out maybe 92? So, right around that Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition Hyper Fighting era, Mortal Kombat 1 era, Mortal Kombat 2 era, around that time frame.
Whoa.
Yeah, he isn't. And you've got like the standard guy. You got like the Zangief guy, the big, who you saw Marstorius. You've got like your Vega guys. You have your, I don't know, really Chun-Li characters, but there's a sort of a.
I haven't seen any female characters yet. Yeah.
Yeah, come around. There's a.
Oh, right there.
Yeah, so there's a few of them right there.
Looks exactly like Chun-Li.
So she's actually kind of like Rose from Street Fighter Alpha series a little bit.
Man, the backgrounds in this game are so fun.
Yeah, and it's like the team didn't. And in a lot of ways, if you look at some of the early SNK fighting games, like I could have thrown her there. She hit me with a special move, but I could have thrown her right there, which I didn't. But see, she sucked me in like really far.
Yeah.
And the early SNK fighters were very fun too, like World Heroes. Even like the sort of Fatal Furies and the Art of Fighting and stuff like that were kind of, a little silly and very cartoony in its design, colorful, very bright.
Yeah. By the way, no, never mind. I was gonna say that there's no round system, but there is a round system.
Yeah.
It's just that you're just tearing through these guys so quickly. It seems like it's only one round. Yeah, I asked because seeing Matlock in that first level in London, I was like, this seems like very much a product of like the Clockwork Orange era, sort of punk London sort of thing.
Sure, very classic era, right? Like, it's like the, when Japan kind of goes through and looks at these major periods in other countries and drawing inspiration from them to design characters, right? Which is cool. I mean, these are kind of unique characters.
It's fun, yeah, no, it's... There we go.
You don't play many fighting games though, right? Yeah?
No, I am terrible at fighting games. I should play more. I sure to learn, the finer nuances, but yeah.
Yeah. Hey, worst best friend. Yes, that's true. That is not the traditional Matlock. Though this Matlock also solves mysteries.
Say what?
Do you know the character Matlock on TV?
Oh, yeah.
No.
I wish this character was used more. This character's a lot of fun.
But it's funny because there's, even people who play a decent number of fighting games, this is maybe a title or a series that they're not familiar with because it didn't get the sort of the level of success or awareness. And even though there are 3 games that were generated from it, unless you're in specific arcades or you were a big fan of the Neo Geo, which is a very expensive system to try to collect for. you may not be familiar with these games at all. But it's always.
Do you think the legal action from Capcom might have had a hand in that?
I don't think. Oh, I mean, as far as reducing circulation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I would think that, ironically, I mean, especially in that era, lawsuits. I mean, if you think it like Mortal Kombat and the huge success that Mortal Kombat had because of the whole potential lawsuits, the whole blood and violence thing, that was huge, right? So I don't think that the lawsuit or news of the lawsuit would have impacted this. If it did, it would have, I think, impacted it in a positive way.
Yeah.
Because people would say, like, what is this game that Capcom is suing?
It was press. Yeah.
Right? Like, I want to see it. Like, well, how close is it? Right? And the final character, actually, that I like, or one of the final characters is this guy called Clown, which is cool. And then Karnov, which has his own game. I don't know if you know Karnov, the fire-breathing guy. He actually has some of his own games where he is the main character. They're sort of action kind of games.
He's from this game.
He's a Data East property. I can't remember. I don't think, because I think that his first games were present on the NES. I'm pretty sure there is a Karnov game on the NES, and so it might be just a character that existed, and then they utilize him as a tying of one of the villains that ties across.
God, I love Matlock's little moves. So Worst Best Friend says it might move a little bit more sluggish compared to other Neo Geo games.
Yeah, you should look at, if you look at the Dynamite or Karnov's Revenge, which is the actual Neo Geo sequel to this. I think it is quite a bit better. I still enjoy this game, but as far as sort of arcade horsepower and stuff like that, I think it's pretty good.
Ryoko's giving you some trouble.
Yeah, I can actually. Ryoko is great because you can just walk up to someone, just start walking towards someone, and just suck them up. It's great.
I saw it happen a few times, and it takes like half your health.
Ow, come on.
This game has a lot of personality to it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I really enjoy it. It's like I said, it's like back in the day, it was kind of like my Smash Brothers, right? Or don't treat it too seriously. People play in versus mode. Just have a fun time.
Ray. He's got some Super Saiyan 2
I guess
hair.
he'd be the equivalent of the Ryu of the bunch, right? If you had
yeah.
to choose. Ray and Mizuguchi are probably the closest equivalents of those main
You in front of
characters.
the Capitol building?
Yeah.
Oh my God! You're playing for all the stakes.
And it's funny because if you listen to the sound samples, they sound really strange. Like he'll say like what sounds like baked potato. See if yeah, it's sort of like baked potato. Can you hear it? Let me see. Will he throw it now? Of course, when I ask him to throw something, he won't. Yeah, you heard it, Bill? Yeah. It almost sounds like baked potato. Yeah.
Ow, come on. Matlock, win.
Come on, Ray. Do it for America.
After I beat this game, I'll let you jump in. You can try it.
No.
No, it's fine. You can
I'm
have
gonna go
some
grab
fun.
some lunch. I think I just want to see you in the game. Yeah.
Ooh, I like that move. I actually like that move. That's kind of a cool looking move. See, like he can just walk up and throw me.
Yeah, okay.
It's getting a little
He's
mean now.
Yeah, he's gotta slow it down. There we go.
First best friend says it sounds like he's saying spinning wang.
Oh, spinning blade, spinning blade.
Spinning wang.
So spinning wang would be a very interesting special move.
Man, Matlock is so cool.
I mean, even the beat up images are straight from Street Fighter, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
There you go.
So this is not the last guy. There's the boss after, but it's just like Street Fighter, where like they don't reveal the bosses.
Yeah. All right, watch yourself. Those geese are watching.
Yeah.
They're gonna tell all their geese friends. Lee did not do a whole lot in that game.
Yeah. He wasn't doing it.
I love those dance moves. They're so cool. A very NSFW special move. Well, you know, technically we are at work right now. So.
And this also came down, I don't know if you're how familiar with Street Fighter, but around that same era, shortly after this, there were a lot of sort of Chinese knockoff Street Fighter games, like modified versions, because
I would imagine.
when the story behind that is because there was, you know, Capcom would sell upgrades to from Champion Edition to Hyper Fighting, right, or Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, and it was just swapping chips. You could easily swap chips out, right? And so you could just like buy the chips instead of buying a whole new setup. You could buy the chips and replace the chips, right, on the board.
No kidding. Wow.
But it was kind of expensive. And so what a lot of the Chinese companies did, they hacked Street Fighter, and then they would sell these kits to make it faster, because Champion Edition is pretty slow. And so two main ones that came out of that were Rainbow Edition and Accelerator Edition, which allow you to do crazy things like being able to throw special moves in the air.
So you're getting the word Street Fighter 2 Rainbow Edition.
Yeah.
That was one of them?
Yep, Rainbow Edition is
Whoa,
probably
who's
the
this
most...
dude? Clown!
Yeah, so this is the guy I was talking about who's kind of a cool... I like his character design, and he's one of the main villains
scary.
across it. Yeah.
Round one, fight.
But during that time in Street Fighter, you could get these ROM sets for cheaper, and they would allow you to do some cool stuff in Street Fighter, like instead of like Ryu like throwing fireballs straight at different speeds, one would be like a straight fireball, another one would be a curved up fireball, and another one might be a wave that goes like this, right? Yeah, I like this character a lot.
Oh, it's so cool.
So I think it was that time where people were just having fun, and like Street Fighter 2, you could just do ridiculous, like you could like go up into the air off the screen and line up your shadows and do special moves in Street Fighter, right? Like fun stuff like that.
I gotta see some YouTube videos of this.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was when we did the Street Fighter collection here, I was so desperately trying to include those versions, or at least one of those versions in the collection. Since you know they're illegal anyway, right? Like those games.
Where's Best Friend says you could press a start button and change characters mid-match.
Yes, you could. Yeah, you
Broken
could.
as all hell.
Yeah, you could. You could put the player 1, player 2 buttons and switch. And
Oh,
there
Clown,
would
you're
be
thinking there you go.
there would be some weird things like if you bit on someone with Blanca, you turn into Ryu and do the uppercut and stuff. It was really neat. It was really cool.
That totally sucks. Oh, that's what Clown looks like? Gross.
Yeah, it's a little messed up looking.
It's like a killer clown from outer space.
That's a great movie.
It is?
Quite ridiculous.
Oh.
Versus, this is Karnov, okay.
Yeah.
Another great game. You should stream that one day, Steven.
Oh yeah, maybe, right?
Whoa, Karnov's scary.
Yeah. He's protecting his oil barons.
A camel just laid waste to an entire city back there or something. Whoa, cool!
Yeah, he can spit out fire. He like suddenly takes a series, you know. But he became obviously more important. The second game was called Karnov's Revenge in certain parts of the world.
Does he became so he didn't have his own spin-off series?
No. It just became the main villain,
Yeah.
right? Like,
No!
oh, I knocked his
headdress.
headdress off.
Man, he's
Of course.
ripped.
Yeah, he's a pretty buff guy.
Matlock wins. Round two, fight.
Yes, worst best friend. Yeah, we spend a lot of time, especially with our digital Eclipse games, trying to include as much as we can. Obviously, there are, you know, issues from publishers or legal issues or things like that that prevent us from doing it, but we try to include as much stuff as we can. And especially, you know, the people who work on these collections are generally big fans of these games, so want to try to include as much stuff as we can.
Is that it? Is that the final boss?
Yeah, that's the final boss.
All right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. That
Mr.
was
Frosty.
like 25 minutes.
I'm gonna run off and get some lunch, but
All right.
best of luck in your next.
Thank you. Thanks for joining for a little bit there. You learned a little bit about Fire's history.
I did.
All right. I will switch to another character now. You are getting better. What does that mean? I beat the game. Wouldn't that technically mean I'm the best? No. Huh. So, Worst Best Friend is asking if there's one game we haven't preserved ported that we want to. Unfortunately, I'm the only one back here right now, so I can only comment about myself. But, that's a tough one. We talk a lot about a lot of these games that we want to do, and even collections that come out that we want to do, but you know, like we always talked about trying to do like a Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles collection at some point. That always gets milled around because there's so many great TMNT games. Not that they're old, right? Some of them are old, but it's not like they've disappeared. But it'd be cool to have them all kind of compiled. I think about one of my kind of funny collection ideas is a collection for forgotten mascots. So things like Arrow the Acrobat, James Pond, you know, characters of that ilk that only had 1 or 2 games, and Awesome Possum, yeah, Bubsy Glover, exactly. Characters like that, and having a collection that is focused on all of those games with a lot of backstory and art about how those characters came to fruition, like what inspired their creation, and things like that, and interview the people who are responsible for those characters, and you know, and kind of reflect back on them. I think that would be pretty awesome. I think it's something that would be difficult to do because the properties are owned by so many different companies, but it is kind of a neat idea. So I'm playing Ryoko now, who doesn't really have any, she doesn't have any projectiles, she just has throws. She's sort of like a judo character. So her throws tend to override everything. And she has a lot, she can suck you in. Not as bad as Marstorius, but like that, I sucked him in. So she has a lot of priority when it comes to throws. Bill, what if you were to do another digital Eclipse collection of, like, what would you want? What set of games would you want to do, if anything, if you reflect back on stuff? It doesn't necessarily have because they're like out of existence or anything, but just like being able to compile you know, all of something together.
I don't know, some of the early type of games like Ride,
Like classic action game sort of thing. Trying to think. One of the guys here in the chat was asking about we got, yeah. Seizure. I brought up my whole idea again of like the lost or the forgotten mascots collection. You know, 16-bit forgotten classic mascot collection. I don't know who'd pay for that, but you know, we need a rich, eccentric millionaire who wants like.
There you go. Oh no, I think it's a Ruggar, a good Tecmo collection would be fun.
Yeah, that's true. Goemon Collection 2, that's a good point. The Goemon games are quite cool.
They are.
We streamed them on a few occasions, and you know, and there's some fan translations of some of the other ones. So being able to bring in some people who did fan translations of some of the games and being able to include those would be pretty awesome. What do they say? What did someone else say besides Goemon?
Personally, about 2 or 3 of those in cities, I'd love to see.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, if you did a Tecmo collection, you could do like.
Oh, you mean like a Tecmo Sports collection?
No, I mean you could do like Rydar.
Oh yeah, Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden would be a great collection because I'm sure there's a wealth of stuff. That series, you know, yeah. Tecmo collection would be good. Tecmo Sports collection. I always thought a Ninja Gaiden collection would be awesome. And especially the series still exists, and just kind of going back, I gotta imagine that there's a wealth of stuff that would be pretty neat to dig up.
We have total Ninja Gaiden.
I mean, probably the last few probably stopped. I'm trying to think of like, were the ones that stopped before like the Xbox PS2 era, you know what I mean? Like,
Rain. Round one, fight.
or actually, speaking of this genre, it'd be awesome to be able to do kind of like the forgotten fighting games or one-off fighting games that, you know, because during the 16-bit era, everyone was making fighting games, even if they weren't released in the arcades. They were just like home fighting games for the Super Nintendo. Being able to collect all those would be kind of interesting. Because there's a ton. Like, even if you just talk the Super Nintendo, there's a ton of fighting games that were just made for the Super Nintendo, or at least 16-bit era. Even like the Clay Fighters, things like that. There's a ton of generic kind of fighting games. Not that Clay Fighters is generic, there's quite a few versions of Clay Fighters, but... Time Killers? Oh yeah. Time Killers, War Gods, all of those games. I mean, a lot of those came out on the N64. Eternal Champions, yeah. Like, Weapon Lord. That's another one. Weapon Lord was one of those games that had such a lot of potential, but the complexity of its control scheme really hampered it. Which is a similar control scheme to Primal Rage, if you've ever played Primal Rage, which I did a lot, actually, Primal Rage. You have to, like, hold the button, do the joystick movement, then let go of the buttons. Yeah, so Primal Rage made things a little bit easier, but Weapon Lord is really difficult. I mean, it's combinations of hitting buttons and then holding buttons and joystick movements. It's really tough. Done by Visual Concepts back in the day. I like this guy in the background who's just sweeping. Not a care in the world.
This is the one I was seeing before. There's like a little girl that's chasing a cat.
Yeah, well, that's the sort of I think this is the knockoff of like Chun-Li's stage,
Yeah.
right? Where like they're chasing, you know, there's like the animals and stuff too. Yeah, Balls 3D, all of those guys. Rise of the Robots. I mean, there's a ton. There's a ton of just like fighting games that you can you could do. It's just like I mean, I bought a ton of them during my time with the Super Nintendo and Genesis, especially back in the day. I bought so many fighting games. I bought like anything that even remotely involved versus one-on-one fighting.
Ryoko wins!
Primal Rage is an interesting one too, especially since there's that prototype of Primal Rage 2 that's available in that arcade. I think it's in New York or whatever, Chicago maybe. So there is a sort of a sequel that kind of exists that was never finished, but it's hard to do a collection. Hard to do a collection with just, you know, 2 games really. I mean, even though there are a ton of ports of Primal Rage, it was like ported to literally everything. I need to hit him one more time, down low, and then he'll be dizzy. There you go. Oh well, I already killed him. Those are for the PlayStation 1, right? I owned, I think, Zero Divide. Criticom, I played Criticom. I don't think I owned it, but yeah, I owned Zero Divide on PlayStation 1. PlayStation 1 was also another one where I just bought tons of fighting games. Like Toshinden, when I got home with the PlayStation 1 with Battle Arena Toshinden, I was so excited. I mean, I was a big Sega fan too, so I had Virtua Fighter, but it was tough. Like Toshinden compared to like the original Virtua Fighter, man, Toshinden was so good looking. And it moved so much faster, and it was more flashy. And then MK2 came out on the PlayStation, so I kind of flip-flop back and forth between the PlayStation and the Saturn. I can't remember Tiny Phalanx. Was it a shooter or what was it? I don't remember that specifically. These those ducks are ducks, right? Those ducks, yeah. Ayya!
Ryoko win! Round two, fight!
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard of that game, but maybe I didn't know about that secret until after I got rid of it. I traded in a lot of like PlayStation games to get new games. Actually, I should go back and look through my PlayStation 1 collection and see if I still have a copy of Zero Divide. I'm using these Hyperkin Super Nintendo controllers just to test them out, because I always try to test out like third-party controllers to see if they're any good. And actually, this is not bad. It's actually not a bad controller. So good job, Hyperkin. She has an air throw. That's her mega move right there. That's like her spinning pile driver. Oh. I think the 8-bit do stuff is much better quality overall. And, I mean, depending, obviously, wireless or not. I have quite a bit of 8-bit do controllers. And I think they're better than this, but they're also more expensive than this. This is a wired, regular, basic Super Nintendo kind of controller, and it works fine. My preferred thing is at home, I have the do-it-yourself wireless kits, and so I took apart some of my Super Nintendo controllers, and then I put their PCB inside so it's wireless, and that works really well. If you've never done that, they actually sell it. I think that's the only thing that 8-bit do like sell on their actual website, or one of the few things are these DIY kits for classic controllers where you can open them up, swap out the PCBs, and put in the wireless boards, and then that way you can keep the same D-pads and buttons and the the internal buttons.
Round one, fight!
Yeah, the Arduino stuff is pretty cool. We have some folks here who have messed around with some of that stuff. Also, we do a lot of like exploration on that stuff, like with things like Tank Ball, and some of the early stuff on Tank Ball was Arduino stuff, I think, before we swapped it out, or it might still have some Arduino boards in there. To be like the controller for the cameras and all the data that's coming in and stuff.
Round two, fight!
This seems to be like a bridge in the middle of the sky. You still playing the same stuff, Bill? You still playing Outer Lands and
Back to Borderlands 3. Although, get Hitman 2.
oh yeah.
Ryoko
Uh-huh.
win!
just because of the meeting at 1:30.
Oh yeah. How about we? Yeah, let's cut it in 5 minutes.
Okay.
So guys, we're gonna cut it in 5 minutes because I forgot we have a studio meeting, and I need to be there, and Bill needs to be there. So
One fight.
we'll end it. Hopefully, I can beat this in 5 minutes. I think I can. I'll accelerate my playing. Uh-oh, I got dizzy though. Haha, block that.
Ryoko wins.
Where are we having that meeting?
Round two, fight.
What's that?
Are we having that in the
Conference.
conference? Okay. There's classic cheapness for that game. Even though he hit me with a special move, I was able to follow it up with my special move. Or Sam Che.
Ryoko.
Hey, thanks for joining us, Worst Best Friends. Glad you could swing by. Yeah, I try to do this whenever I can on Tuesdays and Thursdays just to have short streams. We have a longer stream on Fridays, and that's the more typical digital Eclipse stream. And we generally have a lot more people, or at least several people who are participating in that. I just thought I'd do something during something fun during lunchtime that allows me just to mess around with games.
Round one,
So,
fight.
well, yeah, I should be able to finish this, so this will be good. Oh, he's almost dizzy. Oh, I got him.
Ryoko
Yeah,
wins. Round
must be his player 2 costume. Oop. He's got jump priority though. Oh, I love that throw. That's a great throw. I'll even things out. All right, one more guy, Karnov, and we'll call it a day.
Ryoko wins. Karna.
I actually think there's a code to play as Clown and Karnov in this game, but I've forgotten what it is. I wonder if it's the Konami code.
Okay.
Round one, fight.
Ah. That random snake that comes by.
Ryoko
Burning oil fields in the background. It's all a political statement.
round two.
Like, that camel is America. Oh, that's stupid. I don't know why I walked into that. Oh, that would have been good if I could have gotten that. Dang it! Oh, there we go. Boom! Finisher! Alright guys, well thank you for watching. This was Fighter's History, the first one. Original arcade game, and this is the Super Nintendo version. And hopefully you learned a little bit about this series, fighting games in general, if you're interested in fighting games. And as always, if you're interested in watching a stream, I do it, or at least try to do it every Tuesday and Thursday at 12:30. And then we also have a stream on Fridays at, it's 3 o'clock, right? 3 to 4 o'clock on Fridays, at least. And they generally run long. So thanks again. I appreciate you guys attending and watching and listening. We will see you next time. Have a great rest of the week.